Hello, welcome to the Jellyfish Journals. My name is Susie, and unfortunately, the beginning of this video was not recording, so some of this I've already done, but I went back to try to just kind of explain my process a little bit. So the first thing I do is pull out this little library card. These are for books I've loaned out. So I loaned out The Scorch Trials to my daughter's best friend Addie, and my friend Amanda returned The Maid, and so that's checked off now. And on the back of this card, I just kind of keep little swatches of all the markers that I use in these annual or yearly stat pages, I guess. So after I did that, then I moved on to my 25 in 25. I've already colored them in because it was not recording. I read all the colors of the dark. I read the Gracier, and I also read World of Wonders. So I was able to color those 3 books in on this chart. And the last thing I did that did not record was my reading log. I started at book 65 and wrote down all the books that I'd read in the month of June. And that brings us to our reading challenge page. So I am following the STORYGRAPH reading challenge, and in the month of June, the prompt was to read a book about books. And so I am gluing in the Dictionary of Lost Words, which is the book that I read that is about books. Onto my book bracket. The best book that I read in June was Finding Me by Viola Davis. I do own this book, but I listened to it on audiobook because she reads it herself. And moving on to my graph that shows the number of books I read. In June, I made it through 14 books. Not gonna lie, I'm a little bummed about this because I also hit 14 books in January and April, and I'm on summer break, but I was out of town for a week with my best friend, and we do a lot more talking than reading, so maybe that's what kind of did it in a little bit. On to my pages read. This one is a line graph, and in June I read 4,824 pages, if I remember right. So using my trick of flipping over the ruler so that it doesn't smudge anything, and going ahead with that. Doing okay. I put that little paper there, by the way, so that just in case the ink hasn't fully dried, it won't smear on the page before. Now I'm marking all the dates that I finished a book and the format of the book that was finished. So I went ahead and sped that part up because I don't know, I'm kind of getting tired of it, to be honest. I'll finish it for the year, but overall, really, it's not something that I think I'm going to stick with next year. As far as the year published, I think I had 1 book that was published between 2000 and 2009. I want to say 2 books that were published between 2010 and 2019. And then 11 books were published between 2020 and 2025. So I'm also going to speed this up again in just a minute once I color these in. And I obviously am noticing a trend of most of the books I read are more recent and have been published between 2020 and 2025. I don't make a conscious decision to do this. I truly just read the books that are the most interesting, but I will also say a lot of the books I pick up or am interested in are the ones that I've seen on social media. So there's a little bit of logic behind that. All right, on to my bookshelfie where I am coloring in all of the physical books that I read this year, or I'm sorry, this month in June. Well, I guess technically this year also, but what I do is I marked out, I want to say about 70 books, something like that, and wrote the titles of all those books. And they are the books that I've had on my physical TBR the longest. So that's pretty much how I do that. The only exception are my reading challenge books and my 25 and 25, which are also on this bookshelfie here. So I write all the titles in at the beginning of the year, and then I just go through, and as the year goes on and I read them, I color them in with the colors you see on the right. Now, this one I'm graying out because I actually got rid of this book. My school started a little free library, and I think Kristen Hanna's probably going to be more of a favorite among some of the teachers I know than she would be for me. I also heard that Summer Island, which is the book I grayed out, is not one of her best books. And so I went ahead and got rid of that. I didn't even try to read it. I think I got it out of a little free library myself, so I just returned it to one. And you'll see in a minute I do gray out one other book, which is The Outliers, because that was on my shelf and it was a DNF for me. I did not finish that book, so I don't want to color it in as though I finished it. I will grade that book out as well. And that's just a little code to myself that a book either did not get read or did not get finished. So there I go, graying that one out. And that should do it for my bookshelfie. Getting there. Moving on to my genres read. This is another page that I don't know if I'm going to do the same way next year in my reading journal. I think the biggest problem I have with genres read is that some books it's really hard to nail down what the genre is. I have pulled out some books. I'm trying to think of which one. Oh, so like The Measure by Nikki Erlich. That one isn't really science fiction. It's not really dystopian the way we think of dystopian. It's not really contemporary. It's not really fantasy. And sometimes when I go in and I actually Google what is the genre of such and such a book, it comes up with like 3 or 4 very different options. For example, a book could be a sci-fi and a thriller, and it could also be historical. Like, I don't know. I guess sci-fi and historical kind of cancel each other out, but whatever. All that to say, I've squeezed in some other genres on this chart, but it does get a little tricky, and I don't know if there's any real accuracy to my genres read graph by now. Moving on, new books. Most of the books I got this month were gifts. My class gave me a Barnes & Noble gift card as an end of the year teacher gift, and I went shopping this month. I did pick up one from Goodwill, and I picked up a couple from little free libraries. And this is my 2025 review, so kind of all of the data in one spot for the whole year. So I write down the number of books I read, the number of pages I read, how many were print, digital, audio, how many new books I acquired, how many books I did not finish, and then I have a little spot for some notes, and I think I just made a note to myself that I used the Barnes & Noble gift card from my class, end of the year teacher gift. And that just kind of helps me understand, like, whoa, how did I end up with 11 new books this month? And that would make a lot more sense to me once I read those notes. At the end of the year, the plan is to take and total all the things up. So all the books I read, all the pages I read, and so on, and add them to the highlighted areas you see on the right-hand side under the word totals. And that'll just be kind of like a fun thing to have to compare year to year and just to kind of see how the whole thing went. I did not have any new letters for my A to Z challenge this month, so I'm moving on to my Read the World. I only had 2 new locations. One was in Missouri and the other one was Nigeria. I counted Nigeria because the book I read, Little Bee, it took place equally in Nigeria and London. So I thought it was good to give a nod to Nigeria. And the big problem in the plot happened in Nigeria, so I thought that was worth it. All right, my book bingo, the only one I could do this month was a character with a color name, and that was Saint Brown in All the Colors of the Dark. And now, while I'm letting that dry, I'm going ahead and putting in my Read the Rainbow. So Finding Me had more of a gray color than the Snow Child, and the Gray Seer definitely has an incredibly pink cover, so that probably will win that category hands down. I thought about using Hostage for Aqua, but when I printed it, it just wasn't reading Aqua. And if you've been following, you might know from the beginning of the year, I was never really sure the bee sting would work for white. It's more of cream. So I glued in The Housemaid is Watching. And I need to start finding some books that are green, aqua, purple, and black so I can get those added in there. I think that'll look a lot prettier once we've got some more colors. I did not have any new recommendations this month, so on to thriller tropes. As always, this is a spoiler alert. If you do not want to know anything about a thriller, I would mute me very fast. I did read a locked room thriller, and I also read a thriller with an unreliable narrator. What I would consider anyway. So filling up those tropes, looking good. I did not read any classics in June, but I did have 2 books that I did not finish. One was The Outliers, which I mentioned a moment ago, and the other one was Embers on the Wind. It just wasn't resonating with me. I don't know, as I was reading, I just did not care about the characters at all. So the last step in my yearly stats are my new books that I've acquired. So I'm just going to go ahead and log those in on this chart here. And moving right ahead to getting that all finished up. Sorry, that came out kind of weird. I felt like something was poking me in the head, so I got distracted. But going ahead and filling all of those in as well. I have one more spot at the bottom there before I need to flip open my tab for some more books. And all that's left is to put my card back in. Some reason it never wants to go in that direction. If I alternate it over, it works fine. And now we're going to move on to June. So this is kind of where, if I just want to focus on the month of June and not all the stats throughout the year. So coming in, plus it's kind of a fun way to do some more themes and just have some more fun in my journal. So I read these 5 books. These were my 5 up next books. I had a goal of reading in the month of June, and I did get through all 5. So I read The Dictionary of Lost Words. That was my reading challenge, so I'll talk about that one in a minute. The Gray Seer is a very pink cover, as I said, so I felt like the spine should be pink as well. I read World of Wonders, which was a collection of short stories based around different animals and plant life. And I just loved it. I thought it was so beautifully done. I also went and got through All the Colors of the Dark, which, again, another phenomenal book. I know some people say it's kind of slow, and I could see that, but I think I just love the way the characters developed in that book. I love how they grew, and I love how they changed, and I love how the author tied it all up at the end. And the last book on my up next list that I wanted to get through was The Measure. This is one of my newer acquisitions. I think I got this earlier this year maybe, or at the end of last year, but my mom read it recently, and so I wanted to be able to talk to her about it. And on to my reading challenge book. Again, it was The Dictionary of Lost Words, and the challenge was to read a book about books, and this book was so good. It was basically all the work that went into creating a dictionary, like back in the day, I can't remember what year, and the main character realizes that some words are not being included in the dictionary, and she really wanted to give those words a voice as well. So I did rate that one 5 stars. I just thought it was phenomenal, and I haven't had any books make me think about a dictionary before, to be honest. All right, so my new books spread, this one didn't quite work out the way I wanted. I was a little bummed in the end. I should have done a little bit more planning. My thinking was to pull out the same sticker book that I used for all the stickers in my spread. And between each new title, I was going to put a little flower sticker. So this box would be full of flowers and book titles. The problem is I didn't space things out very well, and that's what I really should have paid more attention to. So you'll see as I get near the bottom, I abbreviate titles a little bit, which I'm not truly a fan of. And I kind of squeeze them in, which also visually makes it look like, hey, I did not plan ahead. Probably using even smaller stickers, like a smaller butterfly there, writing a little bit smaller, but mostly if I'd planned it out with a pencil first, I think it would have done a lot better. So note to self, if I give myself such a tiny limited space like this box, I need to make sure that I am being smart about how I'm planning to fit all those things in. It also, I think, to be honest too, I think I was originally planning to use that gift card in July, so I didn't anticipate acquiring this many books in June, but I don't remember why. Something ended up happening. Maybe it was a rainy day or just something happened, and it just turned out to be a good day where I had some time to myself and I could go and look around in the store. And so I did end up going right at the end of June, which I think was not the intention when I created this spread. I remember thinking to myself, oh, I'm not going to get a lot of books this month. So especially because May ended up having so many books. So just, if you decide to do something like this in your notebook where you give yourself a very set amount of space, in other words, I really can't write into the leaves, it won't show up very well, I didn't really leave anywhere else on this page to write those things, just plan ahead, do better than me. I'm gonna just add a couple of tiny little floral stickers in there so it looks balanced. And then I'm gonna call that page done. And yeah, this is one of those perfectionist things where it truly is bugging me to bits that it's so squishy at the bottom. My top reads, this was really hard. I had a lot of 5-star reads in June. June was an amazing book month. I just read so many good ones. But if I had to think about the 3 most memorable books that I read in the month of June, it would be All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker, Finding Me by Viola Davis, and World of Wonders by Amy, and I'm gonna apologize, I should have had her name right in front of me. It's a very long name. I will try to find that, but it will be linked down in the box below. And each of these were 5 stars, hands down. So good. Moving on to my July stats. So this is where I record just the stats for the month of July. And I'm just going to go ahead and write down how many pages I read, how many books were digital, print, or audio, how many books I read, and how many new books I acquired, and how many books I did not finish. And I just use the same handwriting font that I do in the rest of the notebook. It just kind of keeps it consistent. It keeps it easy to read, and my whole reading journal ends up flowing much better, even though each month has a completely different theme. I wouldn't say I have any real reading goals for the year. I do want to get through the 25 and 25. I do want to get through the reading challenge, the STORYGRAPH reading challenge. But I think if I had a goal, it would probably just to be that every month I read more print books than audio or digital. And so far I've been able to maintain that. I just have so many physical books I want to get through. And that's going to do it for my stats page. And moving on to my books read. So this is where I document all of the books that I read in the month that I am working on. So these are all of the books that I read in the month of June. And to be honest, the main reason I have this spread is because I just think printing tiny book covers is the cutest thing, and I just love how it looks at the end when I can look across the page and see all of the different genres I read and how different all the covers are. If you're anything like me, I know it's a thing not to judge a book by its cover, but a nice cover will definitely catch my eye. But when all those books are on my bookshelf, I don't get to see all the covers anymore. So this is kind of a fun way to get to see all those different covers. Now, I didn't give myself a lot of space this month. I usually give myself a little bit more room, but because of this jungle theme where I went a little crazy, I did not give myself as much room as I normally would. And really, all I need is obviously space to put the book covers, but I just need a little space below each book to write down the format of the book and the star rating for each book. I also do glue these down in the order that I read them. There's no real reason for that other than that's the order I read them in. And sometimes it's kind of nice to go back and see how early into the month I read a certain book, or, maybe which books, like for example, The Memory Palace was the first book I finished in June, but truthfully, that book was started at the end of May. I just wasn't able to finish it in May. So all my books are now arranged in order, and I'm just going through now to put in the format and the star rating. And you can see there were a lot of 5-star reads in June. I'm just really happy with all of the June layouts. They're quite chaotic, but there's something kind of fun about it, and it does feel like my books are tucked deep down in the jungle. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more content in the future. Have a great day. Bye.